Holy shit. Despite my hesitance to give a clearly aging Tom Cruise a chance on a film like this, set in 2022, with modern sensibilities higher than ever towards anything remotely masculine, I couldn't be fucking happier I did. This movie kicks all the right asses in all the right ways when it comes to giving a fuck about modern, feelings. It's honestly enough to get you so pumped, you leave the theater with a buzz and a beard just from watching it. Top Gun Maverick is a high-octane, suspenseful, nostalgic film that does nothing short of delivering exactly what it set out to do, nearly 4 decades later, as one of the best homages to a film one can ask for. And thank God, it doesn't spend 1 second lecturing its audience about the so-called injustices of today, concerning oppression or victim-rooted messages of any sort. Who'd have thought that the neutrality of it all could truly shine so much in a movie like this, that's solely about the story it's trying to tell? This film does any and everything but continue the destruction of masculinity theme that subtly seeped its way into nearly every crevice of Hollywood.
Did you get that?
As the male characters either become dumbed down.
Why didn't you use the metal arm?
Well, I don't always think of it immediately. I'm right-handed.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always
the baseline of any woman just existing.
Incompetent.
No! I'm okay.
The butt of every joke.
A selfie would be really rad, dude.
A toxic narcissistic shithead.
You could be an Avenger.
That is for billionaires and narcissists.
Or shameless eye candy for some reason that can be topless or bottomless if it's Taika Waititi calling the shots.
Just look into the eyes of the people that you love. Not me. What? Just listening.
Sure, Thor, sure. Whatever could this be alluding to? For Marvel's arguably most masculine hero, I wonder. Sure, Marvel, sure. All just a big coincidence, right? Nothing to do with emasculating this character even more at the very end of his run as a legacy character. Like maybe a certain other character you did the exact same thing with.
You're a prince. Must have been would-be princesses. Or perhaps another prince.
A bit of both. I suspect the same as you.
In what appears to be a very easily cut clip for a very wide, certain audience that I can guarantee you wouldn't know a damn thing about your so-called resistance, considering they'll never see that clip to begin with. Cause suddenly with that much money on the line, all your resistance just simply goes out the window now, doesn't it, Disney?
Well, it is true, sir. The Chinese seem to exploit their own people with forced labor.
Shut the fuck up, Thor! You're here to flex and not think, you fucking bitch!
Anyways, while this 1500-year-old teenager, I mean modern Thor, finds himself, when it comes to the scales of socially acceptable body objectivity, it's clear that all the weight is on one side in regards to Marvel films. While so much as a hint of cleavage from the ladies could mean your whole character's outfit needs to be redesigned. But whatever, the bumbling abs with the IQ of a potato are pretty to look at and far less oppressive when they just hand over their whole inherited birthright throne and kingdom to somebody more diverse like it's the keys to his car for the weekend. Ugh. Now look, coming back to why Top Gun Maverick is so damn good, I know it should go without saying, but let me be clear. This is how films were supposed to be made. I mean, shit, man. Just seeing a film that let us get invested solely in the story and allowed us to be enveloped in the world it's created couldn't have been a more refreshing thing to experience in a modern film, thanks to the direction Joseph Kosinski took this film in. Wait, modern? Are you sure? Was the cast diverse? Did we check our boxes? How do we know the audience knows this if we don't tell them firsthand? Well, I'll tell you how. You do exactly what this film did. You make it diverse enough, but you don't make a point to say a fucking thing about it by leaving that info on the shelf and letting the audience decide what's worthy of noticing with their own eyes.
It's just too easy.
You're mocking me, aren't you?
Yeah, but in a supportive way.
The same way people we encounter on a daily basis aren't forcibly explained to us in the real world to highlight exclusively their diverse qualities.
And that little girl was me.
The first black woman and first American of Asian descent.
Levine will be the first openly transgender federal official.
Pierre will be the first black woman, the first LGBTQ person as the chief spokesperson for the commander-in-chief.
Well, I mean, at least in person, that is. Mostly.
There's a stay-at-home order. Go the fuck home!
Nope.
Regardless, when it comes to the characters of this film, all the secondary traits they potentially possess remain secondary, and it's the characters' actions for the task at hand that takes priority for the story. And this movie is 100% all the better for it. This film was simply a pleasant reminder that some movies, no matter how high the bar has been set by the original, believe it or not, some films can actually manage to outperform their predecessor when the respect for the original film is high enough. This is even more so the case here, since the original is further expanded upon and pushed to new lengths that align with the strong foundation that the first film previously laid out for it. When it comes to a movie like Top Gun Maverick, this film is a prime example of how good movies actually once managed to easily provide us with a brief, pleasant escape from the troubles of the real world. Now, I'll be frank here, after having revisited the original Top Gun, well, let's just say, it's definitely from the 80s. Honestly, it felt as though nearly 80% of the film had poorly inserted techno music just thrown in for the sake of it matching what was popular for the decade it was filmed in, and nothing else. In any other context, the music is comically distracting at times and completely out of place for multiple scenes. They could have done far better with nothing playing at all. But what can you do? Love it or hate it? We're stuck with it, aren't we? Anyways, as a result of Top Gun's techno problem, combined with the extremely forced lines of dialogue throughout, these flaws strongly cemented the film as good for the era it was filmed in, and unfortunately, not too much else when compared to Top Gun Maverick here, other than its legacy as a classic. But thanks to the popularity it achieved back when the time era suited it more appropriately, it just goes to show how much people genuinely took this story as something worth respecting and worth preserving properly for exclusively a follow-up film that does the original a service, justice, and brings it all to a close on an even higher note than the film before it. However, despite all this, unlike most other classics I've seen, the original Top Gun may be nostalgic, but it's far from timeless. To a newer generation, as popular as it once was, the absolute best you can hope for when trying to enjoy this film to the same extent as someone who saw it nearly 40 years ago, you'd likely just have to be there to get that kind of experience out of it, making that level of enjoyment for later generations not really on the table anymore with the 80s long behind us at this point. And that's your best case scenario. I mean, this is especially true today, in an age where films are more streamlined to show only what needs to be shown, and also due to the internet basically destroying the modern day attention spans of almost everyone that owns a smartphone. Regardless, the positive reputation of the film during its glory years has undoubtedly greatly contributed to the positive reputation it's managed to hold on to this very day. That being said, with the same diligence for box checking as the casting agent for Batwoman, Top Gun Maverick checks off all the boxes of how to respectfully pay homage to a film, and despite the decades gone by, Tom Cruise himself jumps headfirst back into this role, as comfortably as ever. Hell, you can tell he's truly enjoying himself here, and absolutely couldn't have been more perfectly cast for the role of Maverick, as the only man to ever fly with enough balls and experience to perform such adrenaline-pumping feats. Even after all these years, and among the younger Top Gun pilots of the world, in this movie, Tom Cruise shows us all why there will only ever truly be one Maverick. So, put some respect on this pilot's name, and let's dive into what makes this movie so special. This film starts out simple enough with Maverick resuming his daily life nearly 40 years later. Here, we get to see him as a wiser, more experienced, and fully developed character now, who's likely already lived out the peak days of his career. But well, this is still the Maverick we all know and remember, and despite his age, shows that he's still fully capable of inspiring others who possess the same arrogance and naive nature that he also once had in his youth. With that being said, the film starts off with him working for some secret branch of the government that needs him to test fly jets in advance before getting them approved for wider use. After he pushes the limits of the machine he's in to their absolute maximum, just so he can experience it for himself, he's rightfully so about to face the consequences of disobeying orders by having his wings stripped. But damn it,
Not today.
why? Because it's fucking Maverick, that's why. And just like in the first one, he's just too damn good to ground. Cause right now, let's face it, he's still undoubtedly the most skilled pilot on the planet. And even after destroying a several $100 million jet, with a once-in-a-lifetime gift like that, his talent is always going to be needed. So back at the Navy Fighter Weapons Schools from the first movie, with a nearly impossible mission for the new recruits to achieve, Iceman, reprised by none other than Val Kilmer himself, ensures he keeps his wings by going back to Top Gun. But despite Maverick used to being the star of the show, he needs him to teach and lead these young pilots as a team to complete a mission with nearly unbeatable odds of failure that has equally low chances of returning home alive at all. With him being a hotshot and by no means a teacher himself, this forces him to step back and try and find a way to teach what he feels is a gift that simply can't be taught. And well, upon meeting the recruits, it's obvious the arrogance of these recruits is just as palpable as the recruits from the first movie, showing how the talent of the literal best in the world is only equaled by their ego. However, this is far from Maverick's biggest obstacle, cause on this team is none other than Rooster, his former best friend Goose's son from the first movie we only previously saw as a baby. But with Maverick still haunted by guilt he's never forced himself to confront or come to terms with after Goose lost his life when flying with him, his father-like instincts hold him back from leading Rooster on a nearly suicidal mission where any and everything could go wrong, preventing Rooster from risking his own life and actually fly as the Top Gun pilot that he's worked so hard to become. The recruit's egos matching his own from the first film also briefly stands in his way. And well, let me just say, it was an absolute pleasure to see him school each and every one of them and show them all exactly just how the hell much they still have left to learn. Here, his character is strong enough to know who he is, and he didn't come all this way to be left in the dust by some damn kids, or go down as a pussified Marvel character that after years in the spotlight just quietly hands over the reins to the newer generation, like some inept, washed-up has-been who should probably apologize for existing at this point, simply for being more successful, experienced, strong, male, and oh no. No, don't say it. White! Yes, white. God forbid they're smart and wealthy too. Fucking narcissist. Cause well, anyone with all these traits in the generation before it is just simply a privileged asshole clearly. Oh, damn. He's old too, isn't he? Aren't all older generations of a certain complexion who existed before us by default guilty of being every word that ends with an Easter-ism simply for tolerating a society ironically leading by example via civil rights by being decades ahead of the rest of the world? I mean, for simply being alive in the period they were born in? Newsflash, Falcon, it's the legacy of the person holding the shield that matters, not your opinion of the color scheme of his fucking uniform. Just because you believe patriotism itself, where you are both actually from, is racist rather than unifying. Right, because as soon as Steve went back in time to invest in a little company called Apple, or should I say, to suspiciously stock up on an unreasonably high amount of gasoline?
Look at the price of gas now! It's $7.55 a gallon!
Oh my gosh. You're a different breed, man. A different breed.
Breaking news.
I mean, to be with Peggy Carter, we all know that with him having lived the rest of his days in privilege, after practicing silence as violence the whole time, that picking up the shield of a silent generation boomer popsicle is now controversial all of a sudden, despite who Falcon already knows Steve to be. Yeah bro, nice shield and all, but no one wants a damn vintage frisbee with MAGA on it. Tell Captain America he can keep that shit. Fucking fossil. I swear, if Top Gun Maverick were a damn superhero movie instead, you already know he'd outright refuse to bend the knee to the people who haven't earned his respect first, and would likely just keep his fucking kingdom, radiation, bow, hammer, disposability, techniques, shield, and or keys to his plane until he's good and damn ready to part with them, if and only if the person replacing him has actually earned the right to use them first by proving that they're more capable. Despite the high egos of the best pilots in the world coming to a head when all shoved in the same room with Maverick, there's a clear difference between them and the actual best. They may not see it at first, but the gap in experience, raw talent, and the boldness/hunger to achieve the near impossible that exists between them and Maverick quickly makes itself apparent, since even though he's older, at the end of the day, he's still one of the most competitive people to ever fly a plane. But just like with every new recruit to Top Gun, let's face it, arrogance without hard-earned experience doesn't look good on anybody. Hence why it's easy to look back on his character from the first film as unflatteringly cocky, regardless of how talented he is. But arrogance on the face of Maverick now suits his character better than ever, because now he has the actual experience and tempered wisdom to back up his justifiable attempts at the feats he achieves in this film. Whereas, if any other character did this, it would surely be a death wish, and if they crashed and burned as a result, they'd be more of a victim to their own ego than the actual situation they were in. But with Maverick having everything he needs experience and skill-wise to rationally approach his aiming higher than anyone else, this frames it to where he's essentially the only living person on the planet that could ever hope to achieve these results in his lifetime, making you cheer and root for him as a result. Meaning, if he fails here, it's an actual tragedy, rather than the well-deserved, harsh reality check without sympathy it would be for any other character. And well, let's get real here. He absolutely has to live for this shit to even be crazy enough to bet his life on this kind of thrill-seeking field career at all, making his arrogance far more warranted than any other character's, since when combined with his talent and experience, it actually serves him as a benefit, and gives him an edge that tempts him to aim higher, where other pilots would logically prefer to play it safer and a lot less extreme. This combination of traits makes Maverick who he is, and thanks to Tom Cruise's excellent performance, everyone else gets to see this character for who he is as well. Also, the level of suspense for the majority of the action scenes, combined with the roaring raw power of the jet's engines, lets you get a glimpse of just how crazy it would be to actually pilot any of these damn things. The fact that the cast here actually trained to fly these things for so many of the scenes just goes to show the magic that something as basic as practical effects can have on a film when compared to its modern, CGI green screen counterparts. Also, the genuine efforts made to make this movie feel as real as possible couldn't be any more appreciated when seeing these jets in action and feeling the powerful sound of their engines vibrate across the seats and walls of the whole theater is something that truly caps off this whole experience for the big screen. As a result, it really makes you feel like you need to strap in and buckle up like you're actually there. Anyways, without spoiling anything else, I just have to say that the pace, stakes, tension, and nostalgic throwback scenes of Maverick in aviators on a motorcycle, riding with the wind in his hair into the sunset like it's the 80s all over again, really lets you know that this movie loved its original film. Even the way they respectfully incorporated Val Kilmer's having survived throat cancer into his character, Iceman, was an especially touching sentiment considering recasting him would have certainly been understandable given his condition. On top of that, we have an outstanding performance by Miles Teller as Rooster, who helps expand the original story further by bringing us back to Goose from the first film, and shows us all exactly what he's made of, as him and Maverick's story takes center stage, outside of the daunting mission that's at hand. But yeah, despite all the delays making this movie come out far later than anyone was willing to wait, this movie gives you everything you could ask of it to more than make up for the delay. Also, Maverick's jacket may have clearly had some alterations over the years, I guess. But this movie as a whole delivers exactly what it promises, so much so that it honestly felt like fan service, despite it only having one previous film. Which honestly, just highlights how good the original film could have been, if only it were executed better, with maybe just a lot less emphasis on it being set in the 80s. In other words, where the original fell short, this film fills in all the gaps and shows us what Top Gun could have always been. A timeless classic featuring Tom Cruise at his best, that's shamelessly nostalgic, American, and most importantly, a kick-ass 2-hour escape from the world's problems, free from all the preaching of outside, modern messages. Something I think we can all agree on Hollywood needing to deliberately make more of these days. Take notes, Disney Marvel. Regardless of how much it makes compared to the usual Disney Studios films that are as forgettable now as the fast food you had a week ago, take a good hard look at how well this film is being received and understand what makes it so great by comparison. One look at any Marvel trailer out today, and you'll see why this movie is simply a gem or a diamond in the rough among a sea of lifeless web series and a slew of movies that you'd swear were made by IKEA after seeing them. Movies that seem to deliberately be flying in the opposite direction of what a film like this stands for and means to the audience. A film that's simply made for them, not one that's masquerading as one about their favorite characters, while force-feeding them some bullshit message. Just like IKEA's furniture, now, Marvel films are simple, streamlined, user-friendly, visually appealing, large in quantity, easy to assemble with minimal parts, and most importantly, require absolutely zero thought while being the furthest thing from special, unique, or memorable in any way. Top Gun Maverick may not have the plethora of characters that Disney has to work with, but at least, unlike the overwhelmingly vast majority of any recent Marvel films, despite all these newly introduced, strong and brave characters turning red,
Your transformations are triggered by anger and fear.
Those are like the baseline of any woman just existing.
such as Sabrina the Teenaged Witch,
You locked me in my room.
who grew up to become the soccer mom from hell on the latest episode of My Two Wizard Dads. By comparison to this film, in the least reluctant way possible, I can proudly say that Top Gun Maverick is undoubtedly a much welcomed, timeless film made in 2022. And unlike a certain type of prevalent character I can think of, at the very least can say, it actually has character. Something that's an excellent quality to possess in the current modern film industry of today, making any and all films constructed like this one more than welcome in my book. Anyways, I hope you guys like this review, so feel free to comment down below and let me know what movie you'd like me to review next. Cause as to whether or not your favorite film is even worth the shit at all, remember, I'll fucking judge.
Well, sometimes that is better.
No, I don't think I will.
Infinity Stones?
Fascinating. We actually got a lot of those. Yeah, some of the guys use them as paperweights.
We actually got a lot of those. Yeah, some of the guys use them as paper.